try an experiment. I'm going to record this for the folks at home. And what I just told you guys is it's the biggest election in history, high turnout percentage, more votes cast than any other election. In the middle of a pandemic, people are voting in record numbers. And that's really cool. So whether you're a Biden supporter or a Trump supporter, you got to be proud today that your side showed up, because it was really, really, really close. And it's been an exciting election. It's not over yet. In fact, we're far from over. What we're going to do is we're going to listen to the news here for a bit and see what they have to say. So let me share the screen, because at the top of the hour, they usually give you results. Okay, so here we go. Let's go ahead and I'll turn the sound on. Oh, my favorite ad. Looks like they're showing that.
It can say a lot about the person who wears it, but even more about the person who doesn't.
That's my favorite ad. I love that one. Let's see if they,
This
oh, we
is
did
a
it again.
mask. It prevents the spread of coronavirus. This is not a political statement. It's a mask.
I like that one too. I haven't heard that one. That one's new. Okay, here we go. Let's see. Hopefully this will play. Looks like we might have to restart. Darn it. Let me escape out, and I may have to refresh this page. Go commercial break in progress. Okay, they'll resume momentarily. All right. So yeah, we'll go live here. So the reason we're doing this is because
suits may not be the best strategy, but the Biden campaign will respond formally once that formal request is. But Aaron, we're also told, I am told, expected to hear from Joe Biden in the coming hours. It could be this afternoon. We'll see how this changes all of that. But there is a lot of discussion about that 2000 recount, how this is playing into the Biden strategy. They're trying to stay on top of it, Aaron.
All right, so let me just ask you, Jeff, let's look at where we are in Wisconsin right now, because Joe Biden does have a lead there now, 20,000, more than 20,000 votes, as you said, 20,533 votes right now ahead of Donald Trump. Donald Trump, as you pointed out, won the state by about the same margin in 2016 versus Hillary Clinton, 22,748. So you're at about the same. You're pointing out here that when they do a recount, really only a few hundred votes usually move. They only have a few hundred votes, they say, outstanding in the whole state at this point.
I mean, the Biden campaign is confident of their margin here. And, this is one of those things that happens often in a tight race. They certainly can request a recount. That is well within the Trump campaign's right to do so. The Biden campaign might be doing so if the tables were turned here. But the reality here, and just the history of Wisconsin recounts, usually just a very small number of votes are at stake here. This is a pretty substantial margin, 20,000 votes here. But let's see how this plays out. That's what this process is for. These votes have not been certified. But this is something that we'll be keeping our eye on here, is how many different places the Trump campaign is going to try and make this play. And certainly Wisconsin seems to be the first one, Aaron.
All right, it certainly does. All right, Jeff Zeleny, thank you. And Anderson, it does come right as they're looking at a state like Wisconsin. Secretary of State is saying, okay, well, we triple check, we pick these ballots, like it has just laid out all the triple checks that they do. And of course, the Trump campaign, though, wants to pursue a recount.
And also how transparent the process is, as they were pointing out in Wisconsin, as it is in many states. Aaron, thanks very much. John King, what's your take on the Trump campaign call for a recount?
Well, let's look at the numbers, and let's remember at this highly partisan time, Jeff Zeleny is exactly right. And the election lawyer you had on earlier, I thought was supremely good. It is very rare that a margin of 20,533 votes gets reversed in a recount. A couple hundred votes, maybe. Usually it's a couple dozen, really. You just go back, they retabulate everything, and they find a couple of errors. That's usually the machine says one thing, and somebody writing it down or inputting it with the computer, had a number transposed. That's normally what happens, and it's usually a small number. But listen, for all the partisanship today, the rules allow it. Right? So what we heard last night from the president was outside the norm, outside of reality, outside of fact. Right? There's no cheating going on. People can watch all that. But so that's one thing. Don't listen to that. Does the Trump campaign have the right under the rules to say we'd like a recount? Yes, they do. And we should respect that, because we should respect the entire process, every bit of it. So you're at 20,533 ahead, 49.4 to 48.8. Again, 20,000 votes there. Let's go back in time. This was a 22,000 vote lead for President Trump 4 years ago. And you can have a recount. And again, not much changes, but the rules allow it. So let's watch it play out. But as the chief elections officer said in Wisconsin, she thinks they're pretty much done. A couple hundred more votes to come in. Counties now go back and just double check their math. Then they post it, and we go through the process. The Trump campaign saying it's going to request a recount is what they're saying. We'll see if they actually do it. That process takes time because the state has to certify the results. But there's Wisconsin for you, Anderson. We can walk through these if you want. Michigan as well, 48,176 votes. Same idea, right? It's a Biden lead. The Trump campaign does not like the trajectory here. They're still counting votes. We'll see. We haven't heard any recount words when it comes to Michigan, but we'll watch it play throughout the day. One of the places I want to highlight, and then ask me what you will, and we'll wander around the map a little bit. Georgia is getting a little bit closer. You see right now, 85,000, 50.3 to 48.5. We know they're still counting votes in the state of Georgia. Normally, you would say at 93%, that's an 85,000 vote lead. You would think normally, but here's where we're missing votes, right? The Secretary of State says they have 70,000 or so in Fulton County. That's Atlanta. You see how lopsided Joe Biden's lead is here, 72% to 27%. So if you've got 70,000 votes or so, you still have to count here. You want to count them. And you come over here, not Gwinnett, but down here to DeKalb, about 50,000 votes still to be counted here. This is ongoing as we speak. Again, look at Joe Biden's lead, 83 to 16 if you round up the president. So if you just look at the headline math, you'd think that's a pretty steep hill to climb. If you zero in on the counties where they're coming from, and there's one up here, Forsyth County. They say there's about 7,000 votes here. This is a place where the president might pick up a little bit as Georgia continues to count. He's at 67.1 to Joe Biden's 30. So this is a process, whether we're talking Wisconsin, Michigan, Georgia, other states still in play. Let's let it play out. We'll be okay.
Right. The Secretary of State said there were, 200,000 votes in Georgia still to be counted.
200,000, and most of them are here. He said there's about 70,000. And again, that was a few minutes ago. They're counting, so the numbers could have changed just in that period of time. But we watched them come in. Fulton County says 95%, Joe Biden 72. So the bulk of them are here in the largest county, 70,000, 72,000 or so there. And you move over to DeKalb, again, the suburbs to the east of Atlanta. Look at the margins, a predominantly Democratic area. So if you just do, most of the votes are in Fulton, then some in DeKalb. Logic tells you the way the election has played out so far, Joe Biden is going to pick up some votes, pick up a lot of votes. So 120,000 or so, if you add up the two counties. The question is it enough to overcome the president's lead, which is at 85? So obviously you have to win an overwhelming majority of those votes. And again, as I noted, there's a county up here, Forsyth, smaller county, but 7,000 votes. The Secretary of State says if the president keeps the percentage, if the percentages stay like that, we don't know that they will, but if they stay anything close to that, the president will add some math too. You just have to do math through the day. Some will come in from red counties, some will come in from blue counties. You add it all up, and that's how you settle an election.
Yeah, still a lot of votes still to be counted, 200,000 in Georgia. The margins in some other key states have also changed. Let's look at Pennsylvania and then Michigan.
Sure. Let's come back up to Pennsylvania, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. You see right now, 466,625. Again, it seems like a healthy lead. That's been over 600,000 at times. So as more votes are being counted, the president's lead has narrowed some. Is he in the danger zone? We're still at 80% there, right? So let's go west to east this time. I normally go east to west. Well, let's give Pittsburgh a little love, Allegheny County. Again, this is why we have to do the math, right? You look at the big headline lead and you think that's a pretty steep hill, but still have 25% or so of the vote to be counted in Allegheny County. And you see the president's competitive out here, but it's still 54. If you round up 55 to 44, so 10, 11 point lead for Joe Biden out here, still votes to be counted, right? This is the second largest county. About 10% of the statewide vote comes out of Allegheny County. The overwhelming bulk of the vote comes here, southeastern Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, the suburban core around it. That's where Democrats need to run up the math, and that's where some of these votes are still being counted, including Philadelphia City. Joe Biden in Philadelphia County is getting 78% of the vote. Well, in central Philadelphia, guess what? Joe Biden is getting 77% or higher of the vote. That's why Anderson here, and then in the suburbs around it, Montgomery County is here, Joe Biden leading healthily. Chester County, not as big a lead, but still a lead here. And you come back in here, Delaware County, 59 to 40. So Joe Biden's leading not only in the city, but in the suburban core around it. That's where the bulk of the votes come for Democrats. They're still counting some, so it is possible. The Biden campaign thinks it's more than possible, but we're not going to take sides here. We're just going to count votes. Is it possible to overcome that? Yes. Joe Biden has to win somewhere in the ballpark of close to 70%, I think, last time I checked the math. So he's got to win the bulk of the votes. If they're all from Democratic areas or mostly from Democratic areas, that will help. We do know some others where they're still counting votes. Luzerne County is this was a big part of the president's win 4 years ago. We know they have some votes still to count here. And again, if you're on Team Trump, you're looking, okay, we have some votes to count here. Well, our guy's getting 60% of the votes there. Maybe he'll continue to win the votes that are counted, or maybe they're mail-in ballots that have been predominantly Democratic. We don't know the answers to that, but we do know there's a transparent process in every one of these counties. Reporters can go there. Citizens can go there. Both campaigns are there watching this play out. It's not fraud, it's math.
So let's just for people kind of just joining us, let's kind of big picture. Let's look at the path to 270 because for both campaigns, that is what it is all about. We were just looking at Pennsylvania. Joe Biden has a clear path to 270 without the state of Pennsylvania or the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
Right. And again, this is why today's count in the states that are still open, you see the gray on the board here. Those are states we have not decided yet or projected yet is the word I should use. We have Joe Biden at 227, Donald Trump at 213. Everybody knows the math by now. It takes 270 to win the White House. So let's just look at what is still on the board, the gray. We expect the president to carry Alaska. We're still waiting for the votes to be counted there. And so then we come east. Again, I just showed you, Joe Biden has a possibility of a comeback in Georgia. Donald Trump's leading right now. For the sake of this exercise, let's say the president holds Georgia. Donald Trump is leading in North Carolina. We're not to the finish line yet there. We're still counting votes. But again, the president has a decent lead there. Let's assume the president carries that. So now we're getting into interesting territory here, right? And let's assume the president, I don't think we've done Maine's 2nd congressional district yet, but the Trump campaign is confident about this. Let's be kind and give the Trump campaign Maine's 2nd congressional district. Where does that get the president? That gets him to 248. This is why, I'm going to repeat this over and over today, this is why today's count is so important. Because if that Wisconsin lead holds, and if that Michigan lead holds, if Biden's lead in Arizona holds, and Biden's lead in Nevada holds, finish line. 270 electoral votes. Joe Biden would be the next president of the United States if those results hold up, even if either Pennsylvania goes on for several days or the president's lead holds in Pennsylvania. Again, the Biden campaign thinks it can come back and get those 20 in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. We'll see, but it is not absolute. If the lead in Arizona and Nevada holds up, if the lead in Wisconsin and Michigan holds up, he doesn't need Pennsylvania, which is why the counts today are absolutely critical.
Let's take a look at Nevada and Arizona. Just let's drill down on the numbers a little.
You bet. I'm going to slide over here to the other wall. It's nice to have two. When you have a close election like this, it's nice to have two to get through all the data and everything. So you wanted to go to Arizona and Nevada. Let's start in Arizona. Let me pop this out for you here. And again, it's close. The Trump campaign, I'm going to, the intellectual disconnect, if you will. The Trump campaign says, please stop counting in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. That was their argument overnight. And their argument is keep counting. Please keep counting in Arizona and Nevada. At home, you can figure that out for yourself. You don't need me. But look at the results right now in Arizona. 93,000, right? We're just talking about those bigger states, the bigger states back in the Midwest where Joe Biden's looking at a 20,000 lead, 93,509, 1.4 million.
That's a slight
3 million.
That's a slight gain for President Trump in Arizona from a couple hours ago. Biden's lead was about 100,000.
Right. And so they're counting votes, and that's the way it should be. The Trump campaign says count them. Guess what? I agree. We should count them all. And so you watch this play out. Sometimes in these rural counties, they come in late. You see Yuma County. President's winning 53 to 45 here. They're at 93%. So as they keep counting out here, it doesn't have population like Phoenix and the suburbs do, but their votes, and everyone counts. So it's possible the president picks some up here. You move up the coast, the western part of Arizona, 92% here. It's, again, a very small county, La Paz, but the president might pick up some votes. And he deserves every one of his votes to be counted. The issue for the president, yes, that lead has come down a little bit, but the issue is you come here, Maricopa County, this is more than 60% of the vote in the state of Arizona will come right from Maricopa County. And that's Phoenix and the fast growing suburbs around it, right? That is the defining challenge in this campaign. Joe Biden trying to sweep the suburbs, 52% to 46%. If you look at it, they're 86%. So there's still a big chunk of votes to be counted in the place where most of the votes are, the largest county in the state. So if you're Biden campaign, you're right. It's shrunk a little bit. You get tense. The next couple of days, especially the next few hours, are going to be tense, but you're pretty confident when you see that more votes have to be counted here in Maricopa County, that that's going to happen. I just want to check down here in Tucson and see how the count is going down here. Pima County, 89%. And again, so they're still counting. Joe Biden's at 60, Donald Trump's at 39 if you round that up. No guarantee. The ballot's yet to be counted. Match those percentages. But if you're the Biden campaign and you look statewide, you know what's out. You know the size of that lead. You know that most of the votes are in the blue areas. You're confident. But again, we have to get to the finish line.
Yeah.
You mentioned Nevada. I'll just check over Nevada quick. Nevada, you look at the state, you see all that red. You think the president must be winning in Nevada, but that's just not how it works because you have to go to the population centers. And again, 72, 73, maybe 74% of the vote in Nevada is going to come out of Clark County. That's Vegas and the suburbs. Joe Biden, 53, Donald Trump, 45, 84%. So still about 16% of the vote, 15, 16% of the vote still to be counted here where the most votes are. If the trend continues, Joe Biden keeps that lead. It's simple math, right? If he's winning more than half of what's left, Donald Trump can't catch up. So does that happen? That's why we count votes. So you check up here, Washoe County, the northwest part of the state, it's Reno, and then the more rural areas coming up here. This one's close. This is a more competitive county than Clark County, 51 to 47. If you round it up, about 10% still to count. Again, it's possible the president picks up in those votes. If you're looking at the trend so far, if you're the Biden campaign, you think as they count him here and they count him here, we're going to get more than our share because we're winning so far. And if there's some up here for the president, we can just check 89%. But look at the difference, right? 2,100 votes, right? In a smaller county like this, the president will gain as they finish the count. But he's at 2,100 votes.
That's a great place to stop right there, because you see the difference between rural and urban areas in every state: Pennsylvania, Nevada, Arizona, Utah. I mean, it's just amazing. But when you went to bed last night, I know I went to bed early. We put on a show. The stress was too much. So we just, and it looked like the president had really swept all those states. He was ahead by a lot. But remember, millions and millions of people now voted absentee and with their mail-in ballots. And so here's the deal. In Florida, they counted those votes early. I'm going to go ahead and show you the Florida map really quick. So let's see if I can go view here and show you what we showed you yesterday. They count all of the absentee ballots before the election. So all of the mail-ins and whatever, they've already got a pretty good handle on that. So we know the results in Florida. And just to reiterate what I told you yesterday, Biden did really well in the I-4 corridor. He beat his percentage that he needed to win. But President Trump drove up the vote in his prime area. But Biden's team really failed down here in Miami-Dade and Broward County. So with this down arrow, it really did go down. And that's why he lost. He underperformed here, overperformed here, but it wasn't enough to offset that. But they count fast. But some states have different rules. And when a state has a different rule, for example, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, all of them, they're going to delay their vote counting on the mail-ins until after the same day voting. So that's why we won't know who won probably until Monday. Okay, so Monday we'll have a good lecture on the research paper because we'll be able to do it by then. But right now, if you're the Biden people, you're feeling much more comfortable than if you're the Trump people. But that wasn't the way it was last night. And last night, what we had was we had both candidates come out and speak to their supporters, and they do what they ought and they need to do. They need to get out there and thank them and, keep the morale up in that, because it's going to be a long night. Neither can declare victory, right? Although President Trump would, as he far from victory, but he claimed it anyway. You're going to hear that. But Biden, is doing this outdoor rally, which if he wins, by the way, will become iconic, where people drive their cars up and you have the drive-up rally with the horns honking and whatever during the coronavirus. It will go down in history as the way to campaign if he wins, and it'll become iconic. So you'll hear all the horns honking and all that kind of stuff. So it's a pretty interesting moment. But here's Biden, and then we'll play President Trump in a second. Okay, so Biden speaking to his supporters late last night.
Unprecedented early vote and a mail-in vote is going to take a while. We're going to have to be patient until the hard work of tallying votes is finished. And it ain't over till every vote is counted. Every ballot is counted. But we're feeling good. We're feeling good about where we are. We believe one of the nets has suggested we've already won Arizona, but we're confident about Arizona. That's a turnaround. We also just called it for Minnesota, and we're still in the game in Georgia, although that's not one we expected. And we're feeling real good about Wisconsin and Michigan. And by the way, it's going to take time to count the votes. We're going to win Pennsylvania. I've been talking to folks in Philly, Allegheny County, Scranton, and they're really encouraged by the turnout and what they see. Look, we could know the results as early as tomorrow morning, but it may take a little longer. As I've said all along, it's not my place or Donald Trump's place to declare who's won this election. That's the decision of the American people. But I'm optimistic about this outcome. And I want to thank every one of you who came out and voted in this election. And by the way, Chris Coons and the Democrats, congratulations here in Delaware.
Okay, so that's Biden. Let every vote count, American people. It was a great little speech. And then, of course, he goes inside and waits the outcome like everybody else. President Trump had a big party planned, but guess what? The results started to shift in the middle of the night. And by 9 o'clock, it looked like he was going to win it all. And then things started to change gradually. I know Wisconsin changed about 4 in the morning and went from Trump to Biden. 2 hours later, you get Michigan. And then the surprise is Arizona and Nevada. Those are the two big surprise things. So he comes out and speak. And at first, I want to play this first bit because he is really when he's just interacting with people on a social level, he's very amiable. He's quite funny. He's kind of fun to be around. Let's put it that way. Now, of course, behind the scenes, he can have a real temper and can really rip on people, kind of, for lack of a better word. But he is, what makes him so popular, part of it is that he just makes it fun. The election fun, his rallies are fun. And he starts out with a little joke, but then I'm going to go in and deeper. And then toward the end of this 9-minute speech, so we're only going to play about 5 minutes of it, he says some pretty controversial things. So here we go. Let's play it and let's listen to the affable, friendly Donald J. Trump.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Please sit. Thank you. This is without question the latest news conference I've ever had. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it very much. And I want to thank the American people for their tremendous support. Millions and millions of people voted for us tonight. And a very sad group of people is trying to disenfranchise that group of people.
Okay, so the word franchise means vote. And I don't know where he's getting this idea that somebody's been denied their vote. But you need to know what the word franchise means. It means the vote, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and keep playing.
And we won't stand for it. We will not stand for it. I want to thank the First Lady, my entire family, and Vice President Pence, Mrs. Pence, for being with us all through this. Possible to catch, and we're coming into good Pennsylvania areas where they happen to like your president.
I'm gonna back up. He's talking about Pennsylvania.
With 64% of the vote in, it's going to be almost impossible to catch. And we're coming into good Pennsylvania areas where they happen to like your president. I mean, it's like, so we'll probably expand that. We're winning Michigan, but I'll tell you, I looked at the numbers. I said, whoa. I said, wow, that's a lot. By almost 300,000 votes, and 65% of the voters in. And we're winning Wisconsin. Now, so we're winning. We don't need all of them. We need, because when you add Texas in, which wasn't added, I spoke with the really wonderful governor of Texas just a little while ago, and Greg Abbott, he said, congratulations. He called me to congratulate me on winning Texas. I mean, we won Texas. I don't think they finished quite the tabulation, but there's no way. And it was almost complete, but he congratulated me. Then he said, by the way, what's going on? I've never seen anything like this. Can I tell you what? Nobody has. So we won by 107,000 votes with 81% of the vote. It's Michigan. So when you take those 3 states in particular, and you take all of the others, I mean, we have so many, we had such a big night. You just take a look at all of these states that we've won tonight. And then you take a look at the kind of margins that we've won them by. And all of a sudden, it's not like we're up 12 votes and we have 60% left. We won states, and all of a sudden, I said, what happened to the election? It's off. And we have all these announcers saying, what happened? And then they said, oh, because you know what happened? They knew they couldn't win. So they said, let's go to court. And did I predict this, Newt? Did I say this? I've been saying this from the day I heard they were going to send out tens of millions of ballots. I said exactly, because either they were going to win, or if they didn't win, they'll take us to court. So Florida was a tremendous victory, 377,000. Texas, as we said, Ohio.
Now, I don't know really what he's talking about here, but he's saying he's won. But, you know, well, but the thing that shocks me is here's this big party expected to be a victory party and not one person wearing a mask. Oh, here's one here. There's a mask. Okay. This is another super spreader event. They've been together for hours. This can't end well. But at any rate, let's keep going.
Think of this. Ohio, a tremendous state, a big state. I love Ohio. We won by 8.1%, 461. Think of it. Almost 500,000 votes. North Carolina, big victory with North Carolina. And so we won there. We lead by 76,000 votes with almost nothing left. And all of a sudden, everything just stopped. This is a fraud on the American public. This is an embarrassment to our country.
Okay, this is where it gets really controversial. So listen to the president say some pretty controversial things. Here we go.
With almost nothing left. And all of a sudden, everything just stopped. This is a fraud on the American public. This is an embarrassment to our country. We were getting ready to win this election. Frankly, we did win this election. We did win this election. So our goal now is to ensure the integrity for the good of this nation. This is a very big moment. This is a major fraud in our nation. We want the law to be used in a proper manner. So we'll be going to the U.S. Supreme Court. We want all voting to stop. We don't want them to find any ballots at 4 o'clock in the morning and add them to the list. Okay.
Now listen, the voting has stopped. Nobody's voting. What he wants to stop is the counting in the states where he has a lead and he's losing that lead. But then he's also said later, but we need to keep counting in Arizona and Nevada because I'm behind there. So we got to look for more votes. So his argument's really inconsistent and the voting has stopped. And we have people watching every vote being counted. And there's no fraud here. And yet he's saying there is one. So it's a very controversial statement. It's a very controversial moment. And many people predicted that he would say this. And he wants the Supreme Court to decide the election. And that's just not how it's done.
Okay. It's a very sad moment. To me, this is a very sad moment. And we will win this. And as far as I'm concerned, we already have won it. So I just want to thank you. And I want to thank all of our support. I want to thank all of the people that worked with us. And Mr. Vice President, say a few words, please.
Okay, so we'll stop right there. So listen, yeah, that's just, he should want every vote counted too. That's what American presidents should want. Every vote should count. And the problem with him stopping the counting right now, say you stopped it in Pennsylvania and he's in the lead, so he suddenly began. We have a lot of military ballots that are in that group. Do you want to disenfranchise our military people? Also, too, these people voted legally. They voted early, absentee, submitted their ballots. They just weren't counted until the next day. Do we want, that would mean like all of the Utah votes don't count because they came in mail-in ballot. This is just not right, what he's saying here. And the Supreme Court should never decide elections. The people should decide the elections, and it's those state people counting that should decide the election. So we're going to see how this plays out. But let's take a quick look now and see where we're at. It looks like 49.5 to 48.8 in Wisconsin for Biden. Biden's got a little bit of a lead here now in Michigan. And last night, the president was ahead by 600,000 in Pennsylvania, but now it's down to 400,000 and shrinking. And Arizona, it looks like it's within 90,000 or so. And Nevada, they're not going to finish their counting until tomorrow afternoon. So we won't know this important state, but it could be that the entire election was really decided in Las Vegas, Nevada, and Maricopa County, which is right down here in Phoenix. These are the surprise. The surprises are out here in the West. Everybody's watching these states here like a hawk, right? But it turned out Arizona is the big surprise along with Nevada. So that's kind of where we're at. So we're listening to the president. Like I said, I don't know what he's talking about there, but I do know this. We need decisive elections, right? Because the truth of the matter is when we don't have a clear, decisive victory, that never goes well. And so what I'm hoping for is that if the president wins, he wins clearly in the Electoral College. Biden has already won the popular vote. There's no way the president can win the popular vote. So if he did win, it would have to be a clear victory in the Electoral College. And right now it's not stacking up to be that. But I want to go through all the elections that didn't have the person that won the election in the popular vote. That person didn't win the presidency. Let's go through them quickly. The first one was 1824. Jackson wins the popular vote by 40,000, but Adams became president in the Electoral College. Jackson was a Democrat. Adams was a Republican. Keep listening. Tilden, Hayes. Tilden was the Democrat. He wins the popular vote. It was close, but he wins it. Hayes gets it in the Electoral College. Cleveland, another Democrat, right? Harrison was the Republican. Cleveland won the popular vote. Harrison won in the Electoral College. Gore, Democrat, wins the popular vote, loses to Bush in the Electoral College. Came down to one state that year. That was as close to the election as this one is. Clinton wins by almost 3 million votes in the popular vote, but loses to Trump in the Electoral College. He's a Republican. The word Republican basically means, right, the republic. And the way the republic was set up was with a thing called the Electoral College. And you have to understand what a republic is. A republic is rule by the wealthy, powerful elites in the society, the people that own the big plantations in those days, the bankers and all of that. And that would have been the Republican, kind of ideal. Now, listen, because of this election here, a new party emerges called the Democratic Party. And demos means people, where in other words, we should let the people decide and not let the Electoral College decide. The Electoral College gives the advantage to rural areas. All right. Now, there's some good things in there and some bad things in there. One of the good things about that is rural areas sometimes get forgotten, but because they have this extra advantage in the Electoral College, people pay more attention to them. So if you're rural, you like this republic idea because it means your team can still win in the Electoral College, even though you don't win in the popular vote. Right? So let's take a look at, for example, Republicans win 4 of 8 of the last elections in the Electoral College if Trump pulls this out. So if Trump wins this and beats Biden, then 1, 2, 3, 4 elections will be won by the Republicans with the help of the Electoral College. All right, but let's go to the popular vote. No matter what happens today, if President Trump wins somehow, still 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of the last 8 elections have been won by Democrats in the popular vote. So Democrats don't like the Electoral College because it means millions of votes in California and New York and some of the bigger urban areas. Those big urban areas, they don't count as much as a vote, say, in rural state like Wyoming. The people in Wyoming get one electoral vote for every 150,000 people. In California, it takes almost 800,000 for one electoral vote. So the rural states love the Electoral College because it's the republic. They get a chance to have more of a say without all the people getting their say. But Democrats want to get rid of the Electoral College because, look, obviously, demos, people, right? Okay, well, who started the Democratic Party? It was Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson started the Democratic Party because he lost the election of 1824. The election of 1804 was a pivot point that really created the situation that will allow Donald Trump to be Donald Trump. So what we're doing is I'm going to give to you the alternative essay that came out of a brainstorming session we had in first hour, where maybe as an alternative research paper, maybe you could compare Andrew Jackson and Donald Trump together because they have so many parallels, and it would make a great comparison. It's actually Mr. Christensen down at the taught US History kind of showed me this angle, and I'm going, wow, that's really good. And so we may give you a choice of two research papers to. So let's go through it. The election of 1824 was pivotal. It's the only election in American history that actually worked the way the Constitution intended it to work in the Electoral College. Now you got to throw out the election of Washington because he was a rare case. He won unanimously, and that was Washington. Nobody else would have that kind of stature. What was intended in the Electoral College by the framers of the Constitution was that there would be this group of elites. Now listen to the term I'm using here. This group of elites, people that own big plantations, the rich, the powerful, the educated, right? They would then form this Electoral College. And it's only just a few people. 538 today, it would have been like less than 200 back then. These wealthy, powerful people will nominate then 3 good candidates. Nobody was ever expected to win a majority. I mean, in the first election, John Adams got a majority barely. It was one of the closest elections against Thomas Jefferson. That wasn't expected. What was expected was that they would nominate 3 really qualified people. Now, this would be the rich, powerful elites. Then they would pass those 3 names to the House of Representatives, also rich, powerful elites, people that came from wealth and power and money. And they would then choose between the 3 and pick the most qualified candidate. In 1824, the most qualified candidate, no doubt, was John Quincy Adams. There is no comparing his resume to anybody else on this list. He was one of the most qualified people ever run for president. He'd been Secretary of State. He'd been ambassador to everywhere. He was brilliant. He spoke 9 languages. I mean, the guy was amazing. Did more for this country as Secretary of State than any other Secretary of State. But he was running against a popular war hero by the name of Andrew Jackson, who is what we now call a populist. Now, notice the deal here. Both of them belong to the same party. Now, we've added those words. We've created this in modern times that we call it the Democratic Republican Party, right? All 4 of the candidates. There was only one political party at the time. And all 4 were running in the same political party against each other. They would have called themselves Republicans. The word Democratic Republican, we use that today because we want to differentiate from Lincoln's Republican Party, which is a completely different entity. They're not the same. So we don't want to be confusing. But if we go back, this is the party of Jefferson. This is the Republican Party. And the Republican Party followed the Electoral College. They nominated 3 people, Adams, Jackson, Crawford, gave it to the House, and the House picked the most qualified, not the most popular. And that's how it was meant to work. Here was the actual Electoral College map back then. Notice that Jackson gets more votes. He only got 43%, but he got more votes than Adams did. Adams only won up in New England. Look, New England has been voting differently than the rest of the country for a long time because of its history and the Puritan influence and whatever. But Jackson wins in the South. He wins in the Midwest. He won Pennsylvania. That's an important state. And he wins here. So he kind of balanced out and won all over the country. The other candidates, Jackson, Crawford, and Clay, one only won in the West, the other only won in the South, and one only won in New England. So really, when you look at it, Jackson won more votes. He won in more places, more parts of the country, right? And he got more electoral college votes, but it's not going to matter because it goes to the House. The election that year, literally, was decided by this man right here. He was the Speaker of the House, and his name was Henry Clay. Henry Clay had ambitions to be president himself. And in those days, the best way to become president was to become Secretary of State, like John Quincy Adams had been. So he meets with the future president. He meets with John Quincy Adams. They shared a lot of ideas in common. And this guy, Clay, goes to the House of Representatives and pleads the case for John Quincy Adams and not Andrew Jackson. Now, Crawford had a stroke, so he's out of it, right? So it's just between the two men, Adams and Jackson. All right, well, basically the Jackson people go berserk because they're saying it's rigged. It's rigged. Have you heard that before? It's a rigged election. You're making a corrupt bargain. If I'll give you the presidency, if you give me Secretary of State so I can be president later. And I don't think there's any question that this guy wanted to be president. And so for the Jackson people, this was like the election had been stolen, because by the time it goes to the actual vote in the House, and this is the only vote that matters now, every state gets one vote. And Clay was able to flip his votes and another one for John Quincy Adams, leaving Jackson out in the cold. So the official vote was 13-7. That was the official vote. Crawford still got 4 votes, even though he'd had a stroke. The Jackson people were angry beyond belief. And you can understand that, because Jackson is looking at, shouldn't the people decide this? And I got more votes. So they started a new political party called the Democratic Party. The word demos is important. Listen carefully. You're going to need to know this for more than one exam. Demos means the people. And so they formed a new party. The party was formed by Martin Van Buren, who was the organizer, who would later become vice president and president, and Andrew Jackson, who was what we call the populist popular candidate. So this new Democratic Party, or the People's Party, said we should let the people decide, not the Electoral College, which is a pretty ironic statement given today. Now, who does President Trump have a picture of behind him in the Oval Office at all times? It's Andrew Jackson. Because these two men, there is no Donald Trump without Andrew Jackson, right? There's no possibility he ever becomes president. These two in history are kind of wielded at the hip. And here's the reason why. They're both what we call populists. What is populism? If you're going to do the alternative essay, you need this definition. Populism is a political approach that strives to appeal to ordinary people who feel that their concerns are being disregarded by the established elite. Here's the deal. People, let's take Tennessee. You got hillbillies there. People live on small farms. They're not rich. They're not educated. They can't afford college for their kids. And the big plantation owners are looking down on them. These elites are looking down on them like they're second-class citizens. Now, they kind of are, because they don't have the vote or anything else. And their champion becomes Jackson, who was also started with poor circumstances and whatever. And in the next 4 years, between 24 and 28, they went around to each state and got the voting rules changed in those states. Now, you see right now how important the states are. The states decide the rules. In Pennsylvania, we're not going to count the absentee ballots, the mail-in ballots until after the election. Okay, fine. That's their. In Florida, they make a different decision. We're going to count them all first, and then we're going to present them all really quick so everybody knows who won in Florida. Florida's does it right. Pennsylvania's law makes it hard. It's going to take days. So we won't know the outcome of the election until next week for sure. But here's the deal. These people, white men right here, that were from that second class, that didn't have a vote, that nobody was addressing their concerns. It was all about the elites making the decisions. And when you hear Trump talking about the elites, where do you think he gets this word? Where do you think he gets the vocabulary? It's from Andrew Jackson. Jackson then gets the win. And oh, by the way, I just want to point out that in the South, it's these white men that form the basis of the Confederate Army. They're Jackson people. And when we go in here and look at the next election, right? 4 years later, look what happened. Because of white men getting the right to vote, 647,000 of them voted for Andrew Jackson. That's up almost, right? You do the math, 400,000 more votes in 4 years. Even Adams picks up almost that number. So basically a million more votes basically in just 4 years. So this is a big step forward in what we call democracy. And the Democratic Party, demos, right, means let the people decide and not let this old electoral college system that was set up at an earlier time in history where only the rich, powerful elites got to make the decision. You can see where Trump is coming from. You can see where Jackson's coming from. If you're living in a rural area out in rural, say, Nebraska, you kind of feel that these cities are kind of getting all the advantages and you're being left behind. And these people that have been left behind in the rural areas and some areas where the jobs have disappeared because as the economy starts to change, they got really upset at being left behind. And they had a populist candidate by the name of Donald J. Trump who represented their issues, and they put him in the White House. And in the White House today, you can see that that same voter that supported Andrew Jackson is supporting Donald Trump. So this is where we got the idea that maybe you could do a comparative essay between these two men, start with that definition of populism and explain how they're alike and maybe how they're a little different. And I think it would make an outstanding essay, I really do. It would let you understand more where the Trump voters coming from, to understand their needs and all the kind of issues. But by the same token, you got to understand Andrew Jackson, whoa, he perpetuated slavery, didn't he? Now, Trump wouldn't do that, of course. He's a good dude. But here's the deal. Here is the Trump voter from the last election. Male, rural, non-college white. Those are the three areas. And by the way, this would have been Jackson's voter, male, rural, non-college white. And so, like I said, I mean, Trump is much more sophisticated and, doesn't harbor a lot of the prejudices that you would see in an Andrew Jackson. I don't think he's a prejudiced guy at all. Sometimes he says things that make me just kind of cringe. But that's one area you could compare. You could also compare their levels of populism. Jackson got out and campaigned in rallies just like Trump. And so I think it'd be kind of fun to do. And so let me just kind of set this up a little bit more. I'll prepare an alternative study guide and you can choose, but now they're going to be equal in terms of research. With the original essay, you pick 3 presidents and put Trump between 2, and it's all ready to go. You can even look at the study guide now and see if you want to do it. But then I'll prepare another one. Now, with the first one, you only have to study their presidencies. But if you do Jackson and Trump together and kind of understand this phenomena of populism, if you do them together, you also have to talk about their campaigns. So you have to talk about Jackson's campaign and his presidency, Trump's campaign and his presidency, which equals out the research. So on the one, you'd study 3 presidents. On this one, you'd study 2 presidents, but you have to study the campaign part as well. And I think as far as research goes, it's about 50-50. So raise your hand if you're interested in the Jackson essay. See, I'm excited about it because I think it'll teach you, look, you are all, look around the room. You're urban people, you live in cities. Your issues are about, oh, do I drive the train or do I take the freeway or what? You are urban people. I don't think there's probably more than 2 or 3 people at UCAS that live on a working farm. So you don't really understand the needs of that group of people. And they've been left behind. And their champion, Donald Trump, he represents their needs. And so they got their voice, and give them credit. They won one election and maybe won two in a row. But the core group, right, that forms Trump's base was really created 150 years ago in the Jackson phenomena, where he allowed white men the right to vote. Now, listen, that was a big step forward in democracy. 50 years later, black men get the right to vote in some states, and women get the right to vote about 90 years after that. So democracy is a growing experience, and we got to be proud of our democracy today and how well it turned out. Okay, so listen, I think that will be fun. Let's see, Monday, we'll go over this Monday and we'll make some decisions there. But I think we'll go with it. Every class seems to want to do this essay. So let's go ahead and stop sharing here for a second and stop the recording.